Warm greetings, everyone. My name is Professor Rish. I'm delighted to be able to give a talk centered around human-centered AI education. Before I go any further, there are two important things I would like to note. First, I apologize profusely as I'm not feeling very well with my autoimmune disorder flare up, and therefore I am going to pre-record this presentation, and I'm confident that Dr. Maria Rosa will play it in the symposium. And second of all, I would like to also take a moment, a genuine moment, to acknowledge the First Nations people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm meeting today in a virtual format. I want to pay homage to their ways of life, to their ontology and epistemology, and be guided by them on how I can support them in a way that's culturally informed and culturally sensitive. Like to also extend that respect to any First Nations people who are in this symposium today. Thank you. This presentation is far from comprehensive, but it does do one thing quite well. It provides a baseline understanding on how AI can be enacted in education in a very contextual, nuanced, and most importantly, humanizing way. So let's talk about what exactly is human-centered AI. But before we do that, though, let's take a moment to reflect on how AI has influenced our life. When I got to know about AI, I would say it's post COVID-19, with COVID-19, the pandemic, that in itself was devastating and very, very hard to grapple with. And then AI comes into action. And over time, I've also sat with my own experiences and emotions and how AI has influenced my actions, behaviors, or how it's actually working alongside me in various professional and personal capacities. And reflecting on that, and of course, this is very much based on my personal anecdotes, I would actually categorize AI into three phases. And I've often seen this also align with other people's experiences. The first phase was based on fear and resistance. And let me tell you something. When AI was introduced to me, I just went, yuck, no bloody way. I'm not engaging in AI. That's unethical. I was very, very, I would say, black and white in my thinking at that time. And weeks went by, months went by. I thought, I'm seeing this now used in education in various contexts. So I was almost forced into it where I had to go and experiment it. So an example was when students were caught using AI in unethical ways or in unknowing ways, I had to go and do some investigation. And that prompted me to engage in a series of things like trialing different commands and prompts in AI, like ChatGPT, Copilot, and various other forms. So phase one was fear and resistance. Phase two, to me, was cautious experimentation, where there was some resistance and some fragilities and some ambivalence, but equally, I was getting excited. I was being illuminated and enlightened on different processes that AI can do. I would say now the third phase would be the integration phase. So we've moved from fear, resistance, to cautious experimentation, to now integration. Why integration? And I suppose the bulk of this talk is focused on AI integration phase. Let's be frank and candid here. AI is everywhere. And I must say, whilst I'm saying to you that I was introduced to AI recently post COVID-19, I drive German cars. Lots of German cars are very AI savvy. They're very, very sort of AI informed in terms of technology with safety and those types of things. So really, I was already an AI user, but through a different form and context, you see. So AI is everywhere now, especially in education settings. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge, not resist, but work with it to understand how it can be used in a transparent and ethical manner. So this is where human-centered AI is so important. Why? Because we're not talking about replacing human beings, even though there are jobs out there that has done precisely that, which is very disappointing. And also, I'm cognizant that with lots of global trends and also with rising costs, those things can offer some benefits. But within education, though, I am confident that AI is going to be very difficult. AI will be very difficult to replace or to substitute human judgment and involvement. So human-centered AI really focuses on the humanistic elements around AI use, okay? And whilst also acknowledging that AI can potentially yield many benefits, but the human factor is going to be a core tenet in how we use AI, how we engage AI, and how we support AI usage across the education context. So let's go into this a bit more deeper now, shall we? Let's look at the current landscape and some opportunities in AI use within the education context. So, as I mentioned earlier, education is fundamentally human-centered, okay? Let's just stop there and ponder on that statement further. Education is fundamentally human-centered, okay? When lecturers and students engage in learning, it's often bidirectional. I'm not saying AI can't do that, but there's something special and unique about human connection, which AI often cannot provide, the depth of human relationships. And teachers and students both have important roles to play here, okay? So in education systems, where there are human beings, and I talked about that notion of bidirectional learning, where teachers and students are engaging in that reciprocal interaction, where I know in some countries, teachers are seen as superior to students. In Australia, it's a lot different. We are on the same level. Teachers and students are equal. We have different experience and expertise, and we work together as a collective. We share, we learn together, and we also learn through, just learning through sharing of knowledge, truly. That's really, really important there. And we want to also honor AI, but do it in a way that does not compromise or diminish human relationships and humanity, period. Let's go further. So what are some current uses? Now, I've seen AI use in education within my workplace in various settings. I suppose some examples are outlined in the PowerPoint slide. Personal learning. It's not just personal learning, it's more about students being supported in a way that's quite boundaried and scaffolded. That can be very useful. Now, I don't know about you, I'm autistic. I cannot stand ambiguity or when communication is quite convoluted. So often I would put an email from a colleague or from a student, which might be a bit vague or not so clear, into these AI systems and ask her to give me feedback on ways to respond to the email communication. Now, that's not replacing my role, but it's giving me insights into an email communication that lacks clarity. That's an example. I've often encouraged students to use AI to support their own development. Perhaps in giving them more confidence, they could potentially sit down and map out their thoughts, in terms of how they would like to tackle an assessment and ask AI to give the student potentially some additional tips or even endorse that their thinking is appropriate. AI is no different to Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, where when a learner is motivated and made to feel competent, there is a much higher chance for them to perform the task more effectively. That's really it. Giving feedback, as I mentioned earlier, it provides useful feedback, feedback in a way that can facilitate lifelong learning and development. Administrative tasks can be, removed almost entirely. I have found it to be very useful in terms of doing calculations for me with various report writings, even grading, getting it to do the, the grade distributions. Those types of things can be very useful. Now, of course, with all of this, and I'll talk about that shortly, everything that is inserted into AI also goes through an audit and review by me before it's confirmed as legitimate. I hope that's clear to all of you. So even with feedback from assessments, feedback about assessments, I often tell my students, listen, get the feedback and then sit with the feedback, review it, and see if it's accurate and consistent with the assessment requirements and your own thought processes. Do not take it explicitly and literally and apply it in your assessments. And this is where I'll talk a bit more about ways to combat or address it. So again, reiterating the same statement here, it's not overriding human judgment, but it is complementing human judgment and human efficiency in a world that's very, very saturated by continual and ongoing demands on a given day. Let's look at the risk and benefits. So things I've already mentioned here, but a big one I will talk about here is accessibility. Now, as I mentioned to you all earlier, as an autistic person, I've used AI in ways to support and maximize my autistic capacity without feeling like I'm incompetent or incapable. So that is something I have personally witnessed. I have got first-hand experiences of students who are using AI and their capacity has augmented exponentially. Voila, brilliant. Also helps in terms of getting students to really find a way that they can use AI in a way that's meaningful to their learning portfolio and needs. So one of the things I've also learned is the more AI interacts with you and vice versa, the more it starts to map out the way you think, the way you do, the way you think, the way you write stuff. And also you can, give it examples of your work so it can then talk to you in a way that's coherent and consistent with your communication and learning portfolio and style. So those things can be very, very useful. And also I would say it can also take away the burden and stress from teachers who are already time poor. I've noticed every year my workload increases a lot. It gets bigger and bigger. While the pay salary doesn't increase as much, the workload gets bigger and bigger. And sometimes it's impossible to do all that work and provide that individualized support. So AI can also be seen as streamlining supports where students can be invited to go to AI and use it as a starting point and then come back to the lecturer with some questions to further guide their learning supports. So I must say it can be very useful for educators in that stance. one of the other examples I've also noticed from my own experience is the compassion fatigue, where I'm a person-centered lecturer. I put so much of myself and I give too much of myself to students at the expense of my own health and well-being. Working 14-hour days is not humanly possible. This is where AI can be useful, where I might tell my students, if there's something you're unclear about the lecture and the course structure or the course requirements, ask AI first to give you some assistance. And if you're unclear, then come back to me. And that has lessened my workload in that sense, so I can focus and prioritize on much more important and significant tasks. With any systems, there's going to always be risk, okay? Some examples are outlined in this, PowerPoint slide here. I think one of the biggest issues is data breaches and privacy and confidentiality breaches. So I don't know, I suppose, how this works in different countries, but in Australia, if you pay to use AI, the data is secure and it's safe within the user. So there's also ways where you can actually, if it's an unpaid version, you could also turn off the chat history. Also use this mode called temporary mode, which then allows you to engage with AI but still not store your information or use your information for future AI training models. So those things are really important here. Recently I was talking to my student who's doing an honors project, and I've invited them to use AI to help with their proofreading and also their expression to further improve its clarity. And we've established that they use Microsoft Pilot, which is a system that is paid by the university. And students are given an account to use Microsoft Copilot for that very purpose, where they can engage with Copilot to refine their thesis and make it sound better, so it's more legible to the examiner and to the person who's doing the research as well. So that's a good example of how we can mitigate some of that risk and challenges. I've also seen educators, as mentioned earlier, being very time poor, also becoming very reliant on AI. I've noticed a few themes emerging from that phenomenon: learned helplessness, laziness, and unethical use of AI, where they are using AI to create lecture slides. And AI doesn't always get it right. And they are just using that material to develop lecture slides without checking the content for accuracy or verifying the citations, because AI has been known to fabricate citations as well, and to fabricate and falsify content, my darlings. So those things must be always, be watched and carefully managed as well. One of the other things is there's so much of fear, as I mentioned earlier, with phase one of AI use. For some people, they're still in phase one. Oh, it's a no-no. Oh, if I use it, I'll be seen as plagiarizing or colluding. Well, no, unless you use it in immoral ways. And this is where it's important to support students, which I'll talk about in the next coming slides, in terms of how can we promote students to use AI in a transparent and ethical and human-centered manner without making them feel that they might be punished or there might be a disciplinary action being deployed. So let's look at ways we can support that. So I think a big one for me is AI literacy. Now, I'm a mental health practitioner. I talk in abundance about mental health literacy. There's also AI literacy. So let's move away from being punitive and let's move to a perspective which embraces AI in a strength-based way. With that strength-based perspective, let's also humanize it. Okay? Let's teach students, and this can vary dependently, but I'd invite you all to be very explicit in your instructions and educational training in terms of which programs you can use. How can you use those programs to support your learning? What can you do? What can't you do? Make that explicitly clear. I have not seen these aspects clearly articulated in many universities. They may say one and they may not say the other. And this is where people then find themselves in grief. Oh my God, I've done the wrong thing. You know, most AI misuse is often unintentional. I'll be very clear about that. I've seen that a lot in my own workplace with students. They're not intending to copy and plagiarize, but they are unaware what constitutes plagiarism and what constitutes ethical usage, and they then find themselves in big trouble. So teach them explicitly, teach the students explicitly what that looks like in application in a more pragmatic and real life format. The other one, of course, you know, with assignments, for us, we need to be very careful in terms of AI can be used to complete assessments. So what do we do about that? So we need to also think more creatively in how we get students to engage in assessments. A bad example is lit reviews. Literature reviews are very AI prone. AI can very easily put together a lit review based on a topic, and students who are more like writing savvy or proficient in writing can literally paraphrase the whole report and then claim it as theirs. This is where often I find reflective components can be integrated into AI prone assessments to make the assessments more secure. Or you might get a student, for example, in your class to give them a video with some timestamps and get them to watch the video and reflect on that video. Now, even though AI can do that as well, I often find when students are invited to engage in reflection that aligns with a few things: personal learning, professional learning, and work integrated learning, they are more likely to be motivated and more likely to be seen to engage with AI in a more ethical way. When students are demotivated, don't see much purpose or relevance to what what the assessment is going to give them back, that's when we often find students going into the AI realms. So find a way, and there are no clear answers to this. Find a way where AI can be integrated whilst also motivating the student, okay, to pursue their assessments and course materials in a way that liberates them, that emancipates them. That is important for us to consider. So just a few other comments here as well. You know, one of the things I suppose I want to really emphasize here is that AI can do many things, okay? AI can do many things. It can also really augment a person's capacity. We need to be very clear as well in terms of the ethical use behind AI. And this is where, going back to the previous slide, where we need to really emphasize how ethics is deployed within AI-centered programs, where the human element is continually preserved, sustained, maintained. That must be the focal point here. So let's look at some take-home messages. So going back to my previous comment, the future is AI. Let's just acknowledge that, okay? Oh, AI is our future. And teachers and students must be clearly informed and empowered in how they use AI, or if they choose to use AI without being punitive about the whole thing. And if a student or a teacher wants to take part or participate in AI programs to further enhance their capacity, they must always center their work and their engagement in ethics. It must be transparent, it must be ethical, and it must also be deeply human. AI is not replacing human beings, even though it can sometimes feel that way. It's augmenting and elevating a human's capacity. So that's the most important part in how we approach AI within the education context. As I come to a close, I want to say a huge, huge thank you and appreciation to the one and only Dr. Professor Munir Mosa. And whilst I'm not present there live in the symposium today, I want to thank him for this wonderful opportunity in always giving me the time and space to come and share things that matter to me very much, like this topic here. I want to also acknowledge his hard work and the humanity that comes from him in whatever he does to elevate other people around the globe. So thank you, Professor Munir and my dear brother. And for those of you who want to stay in touch with me, here's my email address and also my Instagram account as well. Thank you all, and may you all be blessed.
Oh, hello everyone. Hi, it's really wonderful to be with you today, and I would like to thank the organizers, particularly Professor Munir Mosa, for all his efforts. And yeah, I'm really pleased with this large participation and the wonderful comments I see in the chat. So it will be a live lecture this time, and it was really wonderful to attend the previous lecture. Although recorded, it was really stimulating for me, and it touched upon so many great things. It's a wonderful introduction in the challenges and the opportunities of using AI in education by Professor Ramasamy. So I really appreciated that. And without further ado, I'll try to share my presentation. Um, Let me see if I can start. Um, um, mm, yeah. Mm. Don't know if you can see me. You can. Uh, do you see the presentation, or I'm not sure if I'm sharing.
Yes, sir, we can
Uh,
see that.
yeah, but is it? Let's see. Now is it better now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. Okay. So I'll be talking about the work we do at UNESCO. I'm at the University of The Hague of Applied Sciences. And also, I hold a UNESCO chair in AI and data science for society. And as you know, UNESCO is really focused on education very much, and the application of new technologies. Now, there's a lot of challenges with the technology, particularly AI in education. So I'll be talking about how to tackle global challenges and a lot of I mean, and a lot of things that we'll be talking about, you can actually see the relevance to the previous lecture as well. Um, no, yeah. Now, it is really nice that we have this symposium today. Um, um, Yesterday, as you know, was the International Day of Education. That is set by the United Nations to be the 24th of January. And UNESCO had several activities, International Day of Education, in particular the ASP.NET was engaged, and also the SDG4 Knowledge Hub. I hope some of you are familiar with these associations and hubs. But the topic this year, I mean, last year, it was AI in education, right? I mean, the topic of the International Day of Education was actually AI in education. It's really the topic of today. Um, but this year, it was really about the inclusion and the active participation of the youth, which really means the students and the future, the young generations, really, to be an equal partner in decision making and in deciding about the future of education. Not just the teachers, not just policymakers, but also the young population, the students or the future students should be co-creating education. So that was really a strong message from this year's International Day. In my talk, I will be in, yeah, I'm talking about human-centered, and of course, this means ethical, this means responsible use of AI in education. But first, I will give an overview of what it means to govern the AI. AI governance is a very big challenge these days. And um, one area where actually AI is making a very negative impact is misinformation or disinformation, if you like, which is a bit stronger. We can see that how it kind of erodes our democracy these days. Our political processes are being compromised by armies of bots and a lot of financial and political interests that can manipulate the public opinions and the way the populations perceive reality sometimes. So it is really, really important. This is some work we are doing at the UNESCO AI Chairs Network with some other UNESCO chairs, but also Professor Magedali, who is a member of our chair, who's a visiting professor and also a professor in the University of Essex. And in particular, I think the teachers have a very high, let's say, a tall order to tackle here. For example, climate change. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation about that. There's a lot of disinformation about climate change. And how do you go about this as a teacher? I mean, that's one example where AI makes it very, very difficult for educators as well. And of course, education is part of the solution when we want to tackle the climate change misinformation and we want really the future generations to be aware of what science says about climate change. Then, of course, population is a very big kind of component of the solution puzzle, right? And you can see that there's a lot of different factors that can affect the way we kind of perceive information around climate change. And of course, related to AI and related technologies, a lot of this stuff, I mean, to do the algorithmic bias, of course, platform manipulation, malicious accounts with kind of robot users that are not real, etc. There's a lot of human factors, a lot of social norms and belief systems, and confirmation biases can be really reinforced by um, by technology, by AI manipulation, as you like, if you like, and yeah, and you have really the education system and the teachers that really have to raise up their game, really, and kind of help students develop into very much critical thinkers. And um, the only way to actually move forward and avoid this trap is to have critical thinkers, people that really question and have a strong methodology of science. Okay, so just to give you just this is one example, but there's a lot of challenges in actually that AI introduces to our lives, and of course to education. And to education, as I said, is part of the solution to tackle some of the challenges in AI. Is it? Yeah. So the next part of my talk is about ethics and regulation. And of course, in AI ethics, UNESCO has been a pioneer, right? I think a lot of you might be aware of the UNESCO recommendation on AI. It was the first kind of framework we have on AI ethics. But there's a lot of ethical challenges in AI, right? Because AI has a huge transformative potential really to revolutionize education, healthcare, productivity, business, our daily lives. I mean, it's everywhere. It's already there. in a sense, and bringing about some risks, of course, and that is bias, can be really harmful to our privacy and harmful to our human rights, and also bad for the environment. It has an environmental impact, not only because of the energy it consumes, because AI consumes a lot of energy, but there's a lot of other factors to do the environment. And of course, increasing inequalities. I mean, we can see the digital divide now becoming AI divide, and even wider, right? It kind of the gaps are getting bigger, and it's getting a more and more difficult challenge to bridge these gaps, and that's a really big issue in rising inequalities. And of course, we need to build some ethical guardrails to prevent discrimination, division, inequalities, and harm to marginalized groups, etc. And I'll be talking a bit about this in more detail later. I'm sorry, forgive me. I've got an issue changing the slide. Sorry. Okay, so the first kind of global action, if you like, global attempt on a framework on ethics of artificial intelligence was by UNESCO, really. We have the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence in 2021, really already, so it was almost 5 years ago. And it was all about human-centered AI, really. So AI must be for the interest of the people and not the other way around, because AI can be really harmful in some cases. And also in Europe, a bit, 1 or 2 years later than the UNESCO recommendation, we had the EU Global AI Frameworks. I'm really happy to say that we have contributed to these efforts through my UNESCO chair and worked closely with the European Commission and also with UNESCO in these frameworks. And the EU Global AI Frameworks are targeted 7 strategic sectors. And in the end, it culminated into the formulation of the new AI Act. And the AI Act is the only legislation we have in the world at the moment. It's the European legislation on AI. So UNESCO's role has been really to be a leader in this, setting global ethical standards. UNESCO had a lot of experience on open science and setting ethical standards on science and technology, and of course, it was the first body. I mean, it was really impressive. It was ratified by all the nations. There was a lot of background work actually to get this done, but in the end, all the nations of the UN subscribed to this recommendation. And now UNESCO is running the Global AI Ethics and Governance Observatory. And it provides resources to policymakers, it tracks country readiness. Yeah, one kind of key function of this observatory is to get the readiness assessment reports from the countries, really, to monitor readiness assessment, what we call the RAM exercise. And some countries have been doing it, some countries are doing it regularly, some countries have never started doing it. And also, there is an AI ethics and governance lab to disseminate good practice, toolkits, research, and knowledge that is available. So the aim is to maximize the benefits while minimizing the risks of AI to humans, to human rights and equality. So the UNESCO recommendation, as I said, the first global standard on AI ethics, 2021, ratified by all United Nations member states. The core values are human rights and dignity, transparency, fairness, human oversight of AI systems. And And there's some guidance on implementation of this in terms of different aspects. But the core principles, when we talk about AI ethics, I think the UNESCO standard set the basic principles, and mostly everybody else has followed these main five kind of principles. Beneficence, do good; non-maleficence, do no harm, that is. Autonomy, that AI should not be totally autonomous without human supervision. Really, that's really the key here, that humans should be in the loop. Justice, so no unfair biases, no unfair treatment of people through AI. It's very important. And explicability, because in order to have human supervision and control, you need to be able to understand what it's doing. So explicable, explainable, if you like, or yeah. No black box AI is the best in terms of ethical perspective. And so far, there has been no legislation about AI governance, really. I mean, there have been some frameworks in countries. I mean, there has been one in the United States, in China, in Canada. A lot of India has one. In China, different provinces. I mean, Shanghai has quite a strong one, but they're all recommendations, right? And the only regulation that has gone into legislation, and it's a law, and it's really strictly enforced, is in the European Union. It's the AI Act. And it is the standard now security requirement for AI. So everybody that uses or develops AI, companies, businesses, government, education institutions, everyone should abide by the AI Act clauses. And it's mainly about risk. So very high risk AI systems now have been banned. And that was the first item of the AI Act to be really strictly enforced in the EU. So there's a banning of very high risk AI systems. And really, the AI Act is a framework of assessing risk and then taking action against that risk. Right? So it's a risk-based model. But what is of interest to us here mainly is that data governance requirements prevent vulnerabilities from biased or poisoned data. And we have to take this into account when we talk about education data or student data, etc. Yeah, manipulative systems, social scoring, emotion recognition at school, in the education, untargeted facial scraping, that's all banned, right? That's all banned in the European Union. But for the rest of the world, everything is game on. So there's no really which is a bit scary if you understand the real risks from what AI can do used in malicious ways. But there's no really restrictions on what people can do with AI, apart from the European Union, where we have the AI Act. And I'll go to now to so I talked a bit about the ethics and the AI governance and the risks that AI holds that we have to be aware of as teachers and educators also, because these risks can manifest themselves in many different guises in the education process. Okay, so that's really the bad side of AI and how we can deal with it. But also there's a good side. The AI can enable, I mean, we heard, especially in the previous talk, we heard a lot about the efficiency, personalization, getting the most of education, and this is all good things, right? So there's a lot of opportunities, and AI is changing. AI is revolutionizing education, really. I mean, it's not the same anymore You can see assessment is not really the way it was, or it should not be the way it was. I mean, what you assess now is totally different because everybody's using AI and we cannot go back. But also the learning process is very much kind of influenced by AI now. So the way we learn and the way we are assessed is totally different, and it's a totally different world, and we have to adapt. And I think our education institutions have not been, of course, like almost everybody in government and in public sector. We have been very slow in addressing the challenges that are coming. So let's see what the opportunities are, or what is the potential of innovation through AI. There's at UNESCO, there's some great work done. There's a report which is, oops, sorry. Yeah. Steering AI and advanced ICT for knowledge societies. So that's a great report. It shows really the capability of AI, and how it can be applied for good to benefit societies. So it articulates some policy initiatives, some legal and regulatory frameworks, including the framework on AI ethics I mentioned. How to enhance our capacity to do better AI governments, that is better AI, human-centered AI, if you like, AI human-centeredness. The AI priorities for countries are varied. Actually, it's a multi-speed world, right? Some countries are really benefiting from AI quite a lot, and the economy is changing. It's an AI-driven economy. And other countries have really no capacity of actually benefiting from AI. And there are huge inequalities, huge divides that are really growing. And that's something to bear in mind in terms of building AI capacity around the world. So more efforts are needed to advance on AI education, research, and training. And I think we heard some good ideas on that in the previous talk as well by Professor Ramasamy. Now, one thing that we can do in order to benefit more from AI, because AI is actually feeding on data. If you have good data, you will have probably good AI. But the very, very important requirement for having effective and useful AI solutions is really to have good data in the first place, right? And we don't really have good data. And sometimes the data drive social inequalities, and that's really quite commonplace and more than we are aware of. There are some recommendations here from a policy brief, recent policy brief that we have been involved also in producing. It's called Data Invisible Groups and Data Minimization and Deployment of AI Solution. So data invisible groups, these are really groups that are underrepresented or not represented at all in data. And of course, any solutions that will be based on this evidence, if you use this data as evidence to actually try to come up to find out what the problem is, what the needs are, and how to address them and come up with a solution, maybe using AI or not, then of course everything that you will do will be biased and skewed and will actually exclude these groups. And that's why we call it data invisible groups. So we need to tackle that problem. And one thing to do is privacy impact assessments, design systems with privacy in mind, because that's really also very important in order to include minorities, because sometimes people in specific minorities are not part of questionnaires, etc., because they're afraid of privacy, etc. So privacy and tackling the privacy is very important in doing that. Privacy impact assessment, that's a key requirement here. privacy preserving methods, embedding privacy preservation, embedding privacy um, protection in what we do with data and with AI. That's very important. Built in, that is, ways of doing that. And also data minimization. We don't need to have more data than we need. So minimize the data, because then by minimizing the data, you minimize the risks of being the data being misused or actually breaching privacy, etc. So the policy brief is available on the UNESCO website. And the other thing is, how can we make data ready for AI? I mean, sometimes we call it AI readiness for data. Yeah? So one thing is to tackle inequalities of in data, but also how to make data in better quality that will benefit the AI solution in the end, right? So that's another thing. At the moment, the landscape of data in education is very fragmented. You have the unconnected, totally. You talk about interoperability, but there's no interoperability inside. Some data sets are incomplete or totally missing for the invisible groups, as I mentioned, or for minority, for example, population of students with special needs. You can see that there might be disadvantage because they're not represented in the main data sets that are held by schools or universities, etc. Right? So the use of data for AI invokes several risks, as we have seen. For example, algorithmic bias. And there's also the danger of widening educational inequities and digital divide, as we have said. So a coordinated response for that is essential. And I just want to mention that we have a new EU project. It's called Raise Up, which is a strategic response to these challenges of how to better leverage and benefit from the use of AI in innovating in education, really. And yeah, we're just starting actually in the next 2 months. In April, we'll have the kickstart of this project, which is about how to harness the generative AI's potential while mitigating its risks for education, and especially in universities. This is focused mainly on higher education. And how to co-create with the students, how to co-create with the young generation. Also, that's very important. Also, UNESCO has an AI competency framework for teachers. How many of you are aware of that? That's probably one of the most visible kind of initiatives of UNESCO. Have people heard of it? The AI competency framework for teachers. It has been around for a couple of years now. There was quite a big summit in 2023 of ministers, actually, because generative AI had the big explosion that year, and all the education ministers came together of the United Nations, and actually all the ministers agreed that teachers should be trained, should have some basic literacy, AI literacy. And this is happening, I think, in most universities and in most schools these days, but not to the speed and to the degree that we really need, I suppose. So the realization of the need is there, but everybody agrees. But only at the time, only 7 countries had some program or some framework to tackle that. So you see the big distance between kind of the awareness and the planning, maybe, from implementation of the reality on the ground. So we need to cover that. We need to actually do it, not just agree that we need it, right? So there's a lot of discussion at the moment, but not much action on many things to do with AI. And UNESCO really in that document, in that framework, kind of articulated 5 pillars of implementation strategies. We need to regulate AI and ensure trustworthy AI tools for education. We need to build policies and conditions for AI in education. We need to formulate local AI competency frameworks for teachers, and really all the teachers would have some baseline AI literacy. And of course, some teachers that will be the AI innovators or the innovating through AI, they have to get a higher level literacy in order to actually be for education institutions to be able to exploit the power of AI to the best of their ability. So some teachers and some educators will need to be well trained and at a quite high level of AI to become innovators. But actually, all the teaching staff will need to have some baseline AI literacy from now on. And of course, this is not the reality on the ground, but this is what we need. Design and streamline training and support programs. That's how we do it, really. That's how we can cover this need. And develop contextual performance-based assessment tools. The assessment at any level of education, almost, even in primary schools now, has to be different. You cannot assess, I mean, asking students to provide reports of many pages, that's out of the question, because you need assessment that will actually assess the critical thinking of the student, the actual knowledge of the student, and not really the reporting kind of ability, because actually all the students these days use AI. We have to do it differently. One final thing, generative AI. I mean, we have kind of initiative about tackling the challenges, but also the benefits from generative AI, that realizing the benefits from generative AI, the UNESCO Chair Network. And there's a tremendous capability, tremendous opportunity to do things differently, impacting a wide range of professional, economic, and creative activities in many ways. Productivity is enhanced. For teachers, for example, we talked also during the previous talk that the efficiency, time efficiency, but also effectiveness of what teachers do can be enhanced dramatically by AI. And this way we can boost innovation in terms of learning process and creativity, which also boosts the learning outcomes. But also we have a lot of other, of course, risks by using generative AI. We just have to be aware of them and manage them and have some AI governance in place to avoid causing harm really to individuals. So there's a lot of different publications coming out of UNESCO in the last 2-3 years on the human-centered AI in education, the use of AI in education in a humane way. And these are some examples. I think there's probably 5 or 6 more policy papers from UNESCO, but these are quite significant ones, and I think I recommend that you're aware of them. I talked a bit about the main really frameworks from UNESCO. And the last thing, which really can accelerate innovation in education as well, but using AI, how can we accelerate innovation using AI and accelerate the good of AI, if you like, that kind of gaining benefits from AI development, is really to open up resources. And of course, the first thing that comes to mind is data. How do you open up data? And that will make AI a lot better, right? A lot more effective for us if we are able to have much bigger data sets and much more complete and interoperable data sets. And the other thing is, of course, to open up algorithms. And this is really a major initiative at the United Nations level called Open Solutions. Some of you might be familiar with some of this, like Open Education Resources. That was a movement that started, 30 years ago, and it's very strong. Open access, of course, is very strong in the academic community. It's a big movement, again, many years ago it started. There's open source software, of course. Open data is a relatively newer thing, and now open algorithms, open AI algorithms. And this is a kind of umbrella concept of the United Nations to enable a more sustainable approach to building information systems that can serve as a global public good. So how can AI and how can data science and data really serve as a global public good? We are working on a conceptual framework for open solutions, including a framework for open data. I think you already talked about the AI, open data for AI framework we have at UNESCO, and also a new framework for opening up algorithms. These are all very important in order for societies to maximize the benefits from AI. And UNESCO is focusing very much on that. For example, open data policies are not really there, right? A lot of countries, 120 countries out of the 194 countries of the United Nations, do not have an open data policy, right? So there's an absence of open data policies. And that's why we have this framework now, a new guidance, if you like, for the nations. This was about a couple of years ago now, almost 2 years ago. We published this policy brief called Open Data for AI, What Now? And it gives it's a practical guide of how to open up your data, especially for governments and for big organizations. That's really important. And it has two phases: prepare your data, open your data, open up your data, and then follow up, monitor, keep your data safe, privacy protected, etc. And these guidelines also play a crucial role in supporting open science, of course, and in facilitating data sharing, enhancing reproducibility and transparency, promoting data interoperability and standards, and supporting data preservation and long-term access. And again, you can find this in the UNESCO Digital Library. And the recommendations it makes, it's really, you have to make data openly available while at the same time respecting the human right to privacy. The ethics of open data mainly relates to privacy. So when we talk about ethics of open data, when you open up your data, what you might compromise, what you might actually put at risk is privacy, and actually kind of impacting on vulnerable individuals. And you have to respect everybody's human rights. That's the main thing here. And you must not violate national laws, data privacy laws, or human rights of any person. And that's really a difficult equation sometimes. So we have a framework also of how to open up data as in public organizations and governments as well. And the last thing is about how to enable equity through data. We have, as I said in the beginning, we have quite a lot of inequalities, and these inequalities are not getting better. I mean, some of these inequalities are kind of increasing. And we have an initiative at the University of The Hague now to create a European infrastructure for longitudinal harmonized data for special education needs students, really. Special education needs students, facilitate cross-national research to improve equity for these students. For example, autistic students, students with mental health issues, etc., etc. And this there's no harmonization of data. So there's data sets that are always really in small silos. And of course, you cannot use them in a very useful way, and you cannot create AI innovations and AI kind of driven systems that can help you in decision making and how to bridge these inequalities. Yeah, and of course, the recent research is showing that these inequalities are rising. So you can see some papers that are coming out since 2020 and later. So we need to build a new educational data infrastructure to accelerate AI innovation. And the main thing is to have built-in protection, embedded protection, data protection, and privacy by design mechanisms. And you can see really some literature, some recent literature on that. The European Commission level, also UNESCO, some UNESCO papers on that respect as well. And the key thing here is how to have open data and actually integrate and have an interoperability platform around Europe for data, especially for special needs students, but also how to respect the GDPR regulation, which is the strongest data protection regulation in the world, as we know in the European Union. So this is really the last example I want to give. And I'll leave you with this slide about the grand challenges and how can we succeed, let's say, in future AI innovation. And we need to prioritize equity, how to make things more fair. Justice is important for everyone. Human-centric is important for everyone. And equity. I mean, how we have equality for everyone and not really massive inequalities that we can see these days. And for that, we need to ramp up the global effort in shaping the ethical landscape, and we need more collaboration and more coordination across the globe. And try to avoid divides and further gaps, really. I leave you this message because I think it's important. Prioritize equity and human-centeredness and ethical and responsible AI innovation. Thank you so much for listening.
If anyone would like to ask any question, they are more than welcome to open their camera. They can ask question. Lampros, in the meantime, if you can give me the host rights.
Sorry?
Just check the message I've sent you on Zoom.
Yeah.
Dear participants, in the meantime, could you please open the camera so that we can have one final group photograph with Dr. Lampros? Yeah.
Maybe stop sharing then.
Sure. Okay. So participants, if you wish to be the part of group photograph, please open up your camera. The photograph will be shared with you as a memory. We'll take a photograph in the next 30 seconds. So if you wish to be the part of that, you are more than welcome to open up your camera for the next 1 minute. Okay, we can see there are around 20 participants, 24, 25 will open up the camera. Let us wait for a few more seconds. Okay, more participants are joining in. Okay, 30 participants have opened up the camera. So I think so we are done and we are taking a group photograph. It's 3, Oh, more participants are joining. Dr. Lempros, let us wait for 10 more seconds. Remember, this is an optional thing. If you wish to be the part of group photograph, you are more than welcome to open your camera. So we are taking a photograph now. It's 3, 2, 1. Smile. One more. 3, 2, 1. Smile. I hope that you will enjoy this song sung by Laila. And thank you so much, Dr. Lepros, for your hard work and for your dedication and for all the knowledge. Thank you.
Hello, Global Forum.
Thank you all for listening.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Lila Duffy, and today I will be singing Amazing Grace. Enjoy. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, chores, and snares, I have already come. This grace that brought me safe through far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shiny hat the sun we've known last day.